technology that is built for your every sense. Acer Pure from Acer.
Officially kicked in, and this will include the additional 25% penalty that he imposed on Indian goods. This would mean that just hours from now, Americans would have to pay a 50% tariff on imports on several Indian products. This naturally expected to affect India's exports in the near future, and many experts have been predicting Indian exports could see a substantial drop in the ongoing financial year. The Trump administration already issued a notice detailing its plan to impose the second set of 25% tariffs on Indian goods. This clearly shows how serious Trump was about moving ahead with these trade measures against India, a move that targets the nation for continuing to buy Russian crude oil. Let's get in a word from Srinjoy now. Srinjoy, good morning. The Trump tariffs have now officially kicked in, with Make America Great Again message being posted by the President of the United States. India seems to be bracing for the impact as several sectors now are believed to be affected as far as the tariffs now kick in.
India will have to have a quick look at what this tariff will do. And in all probability, India already has. Yes, the garment sector will be affected. Yes, gold and jewelry will be affected. But importantly, pharmaceuticals will not be affected. And the sale and export of iPhones and similar devices will not be a problem. Now we know that Tim Cook has been told by Donald Trump not to make phones in India. Nevertheless, Apple is going ahead and producing phones in India. Now, as of now, that will not be affected. Also, services will not be affected at this point. Nevertheless, it's quite a blow, and India will have to find other markets. The Russians, not that long ago, said that, yes, we are happy to buy Indian goods. Let's not forget there's a huge disparity in the trade with Russia, because Russian oil imports have skewed the balance of trade with the Russians. Even the Chinese, who have a Great Wall of China when it comes to imports, have said they are keen to buy Indian pharma and Indian IT products. Now, those are positive signs. Nevertheless, India will have to diversify. India will have to negotiate. India will have to find a solution. There have been problems with the Americans in the past.
Yes.
Let's not forget how the West boycotted India in 1998 after Pokhran. This was, of course, the exception was France. Then you remember the Devyani Khobragade situation.
So that means, you know, Srinjoy, all of the work, the effort that has been put in this decades-long of friendship when it comes to improving ties with the United States, is President Trump ready when it comes to putting all of that at a risk? As Srinjoy has been mentioning, when it comes to the sectors that are now going to be impacted, what is now being said, about 66% of India's exports to the US, and also when we are talking about billions of dollars of industries, that is textiles and apparel export, diamonds and jewelry, shrimp exports, all of that is going to be affected. As far as, let's get you a breakdown on these sectors. Well, hours from now, the U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs are set to kick in, and this will include the additional 25% penalty that he imposed on Indian imports. This would mean that after a few hours, Americans would have to pay a 50% tariff on imports of several Indian products. This is naturally expected to affect India's exports in the near future, and many experts have been predicting that Indian exports could see a substantial drop in the ongoing financial year. Let's put out exactly and give you a lowdown of what sectors are likely to be affected when it comes to these sectors as well, when it comes to these tariffs and the effect that it would kick in. Let's put them out one by one. When we speak of the textiles and the apparel sector, the exports in 2024-25, $10.9 billion US dollars. This is coming in from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Then we speak of diamond, gold and jewelry exports. That is to be affected when it comes to the exports in 2024 and 25. It was nearly a $10 billion industry. Mechanical appliances exports in the same year, 2024-25, amounted to $6.7 billion US dollars, and when it comes to agriculture and meat exports, that stood at $6 billion. Another industry there, when we speak of steel, aluminium, copper exports, that amounts to nearly $4.7 billion US dollars. This is as far as the data that has been collected from the Ministry of Commerce Industry. Let's in the meantime also talk about how the world is now quite aware that Donald Trump can be quite unpredictable. So these are some of the sectors that would be affected for now, but however, there are some other sectors that would be exempt from the Trump tax, at least for now. So the sectors that have for now escaped the Trump tax, when we speak as far as the pharmaceutical sector is concerned, it is $12.7 billion US dollar exports that we are looking at that happened in 2024-25. However, there is another sector that has been exempted, and this is important as we speak of electronics and smartphones exports. It was nearly amounting to $10.6 billion US dollars. Another important sector that we speak of is the petroleum products, amounting to nearly $4.1 billion US dollar, as far as this data that is also being collected from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So India's loss is whose gain? Now remember, President Trump has pushed India when it comes to the highest bracket, when it comes to the tariffs. Remember, it is Brazil and India both standing at 50-50%. Now, giving other nations a very competitive edge because India is a huge market, simply because they have lower tariffs imposed on them. So who exactly now gains when it comes to the tariffs that has been imposed on India? So the Trump taxes India, but exactly who gains from it? Let's take a look as far as when it comes to the other sectors are concerned. Textiles, likely gainers when it comes to Bangladesh, Vietnam and Mexico, because it opens a big and a broader range of the market now, especially when it comes to the Asian countries. When we speak of diamonds and gold, likely gainers are Israel, Belgium and China. Meat and processed food, likely gainers also when it comes to countries like Pakistan, Thailand and Vietnam. There are other sectors when we speak of steel, aluminium, copper, likely gainers when we speak to our Canada, EU and UK, and this is the analysis that has come across from the GTRI. Now when we speak of the broader range where India could actually now look for when it comes to expanding its markets, experts however have been predicting that India's exports could drop to $18.6 billion from where it stands at the moment. However, there are several experts that also believe that these tariffs could equally hurt the American supply chain in the short term as well. But how much of a drop that we are expecting now, especially in India, especially when we speak of such a time when it comes to several of those sectors are now likely to be affected. Let's take a look one by one. 70% of a drop which is now expected in major export sectors. What are the sectors that we are talking about? 43% of these decline are expected in the overall shipping that now happens to the United States. And these projections that are also coming from the GTRI analysis. Now, while imposing punitive action on India and putting the moral burden of Ukrainian debts and the war that has been going on, why is India being single-handedly targeting as far as an adversary like China, which is one of the biggest buyers of Russia's fuel and oil? That has been, as far as when it comes to Donald Trump is concerned, he's now been accused of going soft on China. The US itself seems to be discussing energy deals with the Russian officials, and if sponsoring a war is the real reason, then why is US not imposing secondary sanctions, as the White House calls it, on China? Beijing, however, remember, is the largest buyer of Russian oil and purchaser last year, and the hypocrisy, however, just doesn't end there. Donald Trump saying that the US will allow the entry of 6 lakh students also from China, and hailed what he calls as a great relationship with China. So as far as an adversary like China is concerned, Donald Trump is putting the decades-long of friendship with India at risk. Well, even is this risk worth it? Because there are certain reports that are coming out to say that the steep new US tariffs on Indian goods could also in fact hurt the American economy by adding to inflation and slowing growth as well. Let's get an expert point of view. My colleague Hina is also connected with us, and so is Srinjoy. Hina, good morning. Today the markets are short. but trading is expected to resume on Thursday, and during Nifty's monthly expiry, which could also add to the supply pressure. What is the market sentiment looking like in India?
Well, investors were quite anxious. We saw the impact on stock markets yesterday itself. Sensex closed about 850 points lower. So that gives you a sense of anxiety, nervousness that even markets had ahead of this D-Day. That's 27th of August. That's today, when 50% Trump tariff has kicked in. You were talking about the possible impact on this 50% Trump tariff on American economy. Well, of course, there is going to be an impact on Indian exporters. We're talking about a hit on $45 billion worth of exports from India to United States of America. But reports have now been coming out. For example, an SBI research report has come out which says that, this Trump tariff is also going to have an impact on supply chains in United States of America. In total, it could have an impact of about 40 to 50 basis points as far as the American economy is concerned. Let's also decode for our viewers what this really means, this 50% Trump tariff, because remember, this is additional penalty of 25%. It's a punishment for India for buying Russian oil. It's a punishment for India for keeping India first. I mean, the point is very simple here. Trump says America first. Why can't we say India first? It's as simple as that. Now, let's simplify the impact here. The most impacted sector of this 50% Trump tariff, Amita, is going to be the textile sector. Now, why am I saying it? Because over the last few years, India's textile exports to the United States of America had seen a sharp increase. We, in fact, gained a high market share as well in America as far as our textile exports are concerned. The share of Chinese exports in terms of textiles was going down in America. Indian share was increasing. Now with 50% tariff kicking in, India's competitiveness, the edge that India had in terms of competitiveness in textile exports, that's going to go down. It is going to benefit countries like China, Indonesia, Vietnam, as well as Japan. Then another sector that's going to be badly hit is going to be the gems and jewelry gold export sector. Now, experts believe that, because we are now going to focus on boosting our domestic consumption, the overall impact is going to be moderate, and government is also keeping a close eye on the developments, and hence, as the government's message has been absolutely clear, we will focus on Atmanirbharta, we will focus on boosting our domestic consumption. We will also look at this as an opportunity. Remember, in the past also, Prime Minister's message has been very clear. We need to turn a crisis into an opportunity. Hence, this is an opportunity for India to
Well, that has been a Swadeshi pitch that has been made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as Hina pointed out, all the sectors that would be affected, but there are certain sectors that are also exempt from the fresh tariffs that also include auto and auto parts, iron, steel and aluminium, copper and its products, pharma, even electronics that include chip, mobiles, tablets. But while we also talk about how India continues to push for a trade deal, that could also possibly roll back some tariffs, and the volatility and the shifts in the global supply chain may continue. Would that now become the new normal unless serious negotiations restart remains to be seen in the near future. Srinjoy and Hina, appreciate you joining us here on the broadcast. But back home, questions have already started against the government when it comes to these issues that are now being raised as Trump's tariff tyranny has begun. The Vipaksh is now blaming the government for the 50% tariffs that have now been imposed, calling it as nothing but a direct failure of India's foreign policy. Multiple reactions coming in from the opposition side, asking the Prime Minister now to take a stand.
Well, I see it as a complete failure of our foreign policy. Let's understand one important thing. When the US President more than 29 times was saying that he is behind the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, Prime Minister Modi was quiet, thinking that he would reduce the tariff. Even in Parliament, he didn't speak a word. Now, after the tariffs have gone up to 50%, the Prime Minister should come out and tell us that who was behind the ceasefire, because yesterday again Trump said that he was behind the ceasefire. So that now the Prime Minister can tell us the truth.
और एक बार भी प्रधानमंत्री जी ने ये नहीं कहा कि ट्रम्प झूठ बोल रहे हैं, एक बार भी नहीं कहा, बार बार बोलने के बाद नहीं कहा कि आप ये तो बोल दीजिए। इंदिरा जी ने भी तो निक्सन को बोला था, आपको बोलने में क्या आपत्ति है? आप 140 करोड़ लोगों के प्रधानमंत्री हैं, आप कोई कमजोर नहीं है, आपके साथ पूरा देश खड़ा।
It's grossly unfortunate and highly condemnable that US is treating India as a colony. In fact, this is not tariff, this is a sanction or an embargo. So virtually it's a trade blockade on India. And I can say very well that we are paying the price for putting all the eggs in the US basket. We have been always telling Indian government to be prudent and should consider having an egalitarian and also an equitable foreign policy.
But as far as asking the Prime Minister to take a stand, well, the government of India and the Prime Minister himself has done it on multiple occasions. Even when it comes to the innumerable times that Donald Trump seems to be boasting about brokering a ceasefire, this seems to be an indirect when it comes to the pressure that seems to be building on India, just because India is one of the multiple consumers that we speak of Russian oil, including China, that has been the biggest buyer. But as far as Prime Minister Modi is concerned, he's made a rallying cry that we heard that coming from the ramparts of the Red Fort on the occasion of Independence Day, where he said that going Swadeshi or self-reliance should be the way of life for Indians and something that the country should embrace with pride. Vocal for local continues to be the prominent pitch that has been made by the Prime Minister on several occasions, and especially speaking on the fact as far as the pressure that has been built continuously on part of President Trump. Well, the Prime Minister has made it clear on several occasions that he is ready to let go if there is any personal equation that would be impacted, but there would be at any cost no compromise when it comes to the Kisan of India, the small businesses, and even when it comes to cattle raiders. Well, that is a big development that we are tracking as far as officially now the Trump tariffs, meanwhile, that has now officially kicked in.